Okay. So Nick Frank is our speaker today, and thanks, Nick, for joining. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. I think everybody's got the presentation, and we're eager to hear your talk. So thanks for joining.
This is Lou. I might add if we could ask people to mute their microphones, that would be helpful.
Yep. *6 mutes, or just mute your phones, everyone. Thanks. Except for you, of course, Nick.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hope you've got the presentation. It's just really a very high level, so if you haven't, don't worry. You'll still be able to follow it, what I'm going to be talking about, which is really about seeing the wood from the trees in service transformation. And I guess, my name's Nick Frank, and I work as a consultant, and one of the most common questions that I really hear from senior executives wanting to start a transformation program is, where do I start? And especially I find when people have been worked in product-focused companies, they're very sure as to how to initiate the change, within the intangible kind of service business. They're used to products, things that you can drop in your foot. And they either sort of prevaricate and don't move forward, or they throw caution to the wind and just treat it like their product business. So, I mean, for someone like myself, this is quite good news because, in a sense, customers, people and companies need external support. But also, it throws up challenges when talking to these guys in terms of really trying to understand their thoughts, because normally their thoughts are quite messy, they jump all around the place, and really they can't see the wood from the trees, but more importantly, I can't see the wood from the trees as we speak. And so I sort of started to develop a tool for myself, a thinking tool, to really help me with this conversation. And that's what this webinar is really about. And Hello very kindly invited me along onto the call. So maybe just a quick word about myself. That's just looking at slide 3. Just on the left-hand side, you can gather that I've got mainly an industrial background, starting life as a professional engineer with Xerox, and then got involved in the service business in fasteners. I was responsible for setting up a $30 million full-service program with fasteners, and I always think that fasteners, people think, hey, service is associated with fasteners, but these programs are very much output-based, very innovative, and very sophisticated from a business sense, maybe not from a product sense. And then when I was done with that, setting up the operations and really developing the business, I moved into an injection molding company where I was really responsible as the general manager for aftermarket services, from turning the business into from a reactive to a proactive service type approach. And now I work as a consultant for the last 4 years, really trying to help manufacturing technology businesses, release the potential of their service business. And I work with a number of partners, consulting partners, and I also do a little bit of lecturing at Warwick University on their service management MSc and at the Henley Business School. So that's really probably enough about myself. Coming back to the wood and the trees, slide 4. So, as I said, over time I kind of developed this concept of a service business model, also which has been influenced quite a lot by some of my partners, especially Noventum. And as I said, it really acts as my framework through the discussion. So as I go through, I can start to fill in the gaps, as well as it's also very helpful through the transformation process, as it is a good reminder of the kind of key capabilities, things that you've got to get right. Because in reality, I'm sure you all have the same experiences. The reality of business, things never work out in a lovely, logical, straight line. The kinds of well-crafted sort of case studies that we kind of see in conferences, that is just not what life just doesn't work that particular way. So you have to be able to take this jumble of information and activities and really sort it out. So I find that I don't actually start at any one particular point on this this framework. It's really where the client feels they have the most pressing problem, and then you can work from there, and then you can start to fill in the gaps and really start to then get behind what is the real pain, and therefore what kind of solutions can you offer them, and how can you basically help them achieve their goals more quickly? So just moving on to slide 5. I guess this is just my starting point. Is you've got to start at a reasonably high level to get an overview of the process. So this is kind of my mind's eye where I start. I'm looking for basically sort of 4 different components. And the first one is really, does the management team or the person that I'm talking to, do they really understand the potential value of the services to both their customers, but as well as themselves? Have they really, do they really understand how it can add to the business? Do they understand how it adds to the brand? Are they able to deliver and communicate the value? It's just that the first sort of natural starting point is, do they understand the value? I then try to sort of like get and have a discussion around their go-to-market strategies, about how effective they are, what kind of tools they use, what kind of sales model they use, and then look to the service delivery side, which is in effect the operational side of service, because this is so important in terms of delivering services profitably, but also consistently, and especially important for global and international companies who are trying to deliver a consistent brand value across the world. And then I'm also looking for the existence of some sort of plan, something that really pulls together their ideas, and a plan that is really supported by the leadership team. So this is kind of where I start, not trying to get into too much detail, but just starting to try to gauge, using the service business model, how they lie in those 4 different areas. And then once I've done that, we can then start to get through to some of the detailed drivers that you generally find in successful service businesses. And these drivers have come from, a lot of it's come from one of my partners, Noventum Service Management, but others have come from my own experiences of talking to different clients. So if you just look to slide 6, is really the first starting point, looking at value. And I guess when we start delving into the detail of what lies behind value, I start looking for evidence of the understanding of the customer journey. So this is not necessarily the first interaction with you, the OEM, or you, the company. This starts before that. How do they actually come to consider the need for services? And then what has happened at the various different touch points along their journey, maybe to your company? So looking at touch points with your own company, but also with other external organizations which may be influencing their decision making around services. Looking for things like, do they have alternative journeys or a parallel journey, alternative navigation points? These are the kind of questions that really looking for, because they're really, really very important in starting to develop the service propositions, and really also in terms of developing the sales model, because often the customer journey will give good indications of and good opportunities for where the customer is ready to hear the sales story. And I don't know if you find, but I find that with experiences that customer journey, generally companies understand their customer journey intuitively. They know their customers. They may have never written it down, but if you put enough people in the room, they tend to have a pretty good feel, although they don't tend to go back far enough into why the service business and how the customer got to the service business. The second area I tend to look for in terms of understanding value is actually, does the company actually even understand how they're going to manage their corporate value? So the first question is really, what are their corporate objectives? Are they actually, it's as simple as, are they actually trying to make money? What are they trying to do from a corporate perspective. What are their objectives? What are their growth objectives? And how do they see service really fitting into that? What kind of business model have they got for their business, and how does service fit into that? And one of the classic questions is, have they chosen to have service as a P&L or as a cost center? And then that leads to, the kind of organizational design that they have to employ to actually optimize the value they get from their service business. Have they got a good framework for the KPIs that they use to manage value in their service business? And another important aspect of knowledge is the knowledge management within the business. Are they effective in managing knowledge within the business? And also a factor is their own culture. That's a factor that's very important in driving their ability to really maximize their opportunities. So having understood the customer journey and got a good idea of themselves as a business and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to manage corporate value, it's obviously very important then to understand the customer's value, how the customer values the proposition of that particular business, and how they value their brand. And this, for me, this is a lot of getting really inside the customer and the customer's value chain. What's really important to the customer? How do they actually make their money, and what are their key drivers for making money? And it's not just the customers, but the customer's customer as well. If you can understand this link, you can start to identify the elements that you can influence as an OEM or as a provider of service that helps the customer become much more effective within this business. And this is not just only, looking at this. Well, this will also help you and helps me understand, what kind of segments they should be looking at, because different customers have different value, different propositions in different ways. So segmentation is very important, but also through the life cycle of the product, especially complex products. Very important to understand that, because that's where the opportunities really lie. And I know that sometimes companies are quite surprised. For example, there's one company that I worked with Noventum, where it's an automation business, and when they went and talked to their customers, what they found was that the customers really had a very high appreciation of their brand, and they physically wanted this customer to bring their engineers into their facility to help them improve their OE, to help them improve the performance of their plants. This was something they were really almost willing the customer into. So it's a very important aspect to get right. But just understanding the value won't make you a successful business. And the next stage I look at in more detail is the sort of like go-to-market strategy, which is in slide 7. And maybe there's kind of two elements to look at there. There's the ability to actually develop propositions and deploy them, and generally they're looking for some sort of formal process, because we see that leading businesses do have a formalized methodology for looking at their ideas and then bringing those ideas and getting them into the market, deploying them in the market, and managing through the product life cycle. So, but often the service side of the business, especially of a product-orientated business, this kind of proposition and deployment process is often missing. It's kind of just forgotten. They do it with their products, but not with their services. And I think an important part for many product-orientated managers to understand is that because products generally require much higher investment, especially in the product development process. For example, developing a prototype can be extremely expensive in the context of the total revenue stream of the products. That they are much more rigid about the stage gates that they go through, whereas a service is much more intangible. The investment is a lot lower. So what we tend to see is a greater use of prototyping in the development process, as well as a greater use of service design to really get into the emotional side of why people are using the services and making sure that they get a good experience. The other aspect of go-to-market I think is important is the service sales models. So I find I start drilling down to that in the detail. And when I say service sales model, I mean it in the sort of broadest use of the word sales. That's the not only marketing, but the direct sales force, the indirect sales force, maybe the third-party channel partners, as well as sales support, the sales support organization. All these different elements need to be aligned to effectively sell service, and they need to be also aligned, especially within product-orientated customers, to the product side of the business. It's dangerous to look at them completely independently because normally there is quite a strong link between them. So that's really what I generally look for in the go-to-market strategy and in the discussions that I'm having, and then looking at a little bit more detail at the service delivery. I tend to look at service delivery. That's slide 8. Because service delivery is so important to being able to deliver a profitable and sustainable business. And I guess within service delivery, I look to break it down into 3 different elements. Firstly, the service delivery model, and this is really the nuts and bolts of what it is you do. And it's surprising how many organizations really struggle with this particular element. In essence, I know that when I'm looking at the service delivery model, I'm really looking for 6 different components. At a high level, looking for the process flows for the different activities and how those activities support the business, the whole business model. Just in itself, that's quite complex. But it's one thing having the process flows, but you also want to start to see a set of management rules that, if you like, govern how those processes are implemented. And especially for big businesses, it's very important that those are written down so that they're consistent across the globe. Then the performance measures, the KPIs, which support each of the different processes. The people competencies that are required to execute on those processes should be defined. The functional requirements that lie behind the processes. So what the functional requirements that are used to then define the IT tools. Very, very important that these are understood, because it's a problem I'm increasingly seeing is a lot of businesses, as they grow through, especially acquisition, they start to actually have different perceptions around the service delivery model in different parts of the world or with different subsidiaries. And actually one of their big challenges is to actually standardize the processes, to be able to then standardize the management processes, to then be able to select standard tools using across the business so that they have the optimum operation across the world that can consistently deliver the service and the experience to all their customers, wherever they might be. I think the second aspect of service delivery I look for is the people in an organization. They're so key to any transformation. And what we're looking for there is that an organization that is constantly looking to develop its people, is aware of the competencies that they need, and then has formal training programs to develop those competencies, to develop the organization through things like succession planning. And organizations that are also looking at the leadership, who are looking to develop leaders who can actually inspire and engage their employees in achieving the company's objectives. So people in organizations, incredibly important part of service transformation. And then I guess the final aspect of service delivery look for is really in terms of customer experience management. And I find that often this is an area that's overlooked because many managers, especially service managers, they manage this intuitively. It's not that they don't think about customer experience. It's that it's done intuitively, and it's not designed, it's not really managed, it's kind of done on an ad hoc basis. And I think that this is an area where now increasingly with the you see more customer satisfaction type surveys, NPS type programs, that customers are becoming much more aware. But it goes much deeper than just doing a customer satisfaction survey every month or two, however the company operates. It's important to go much more deeply and have multiple methods within the organization for understanding how customers are experiencing the services and how they can be involved. So I guess, just moving on to slide 9, that leaves the plan. And I know that this sounds so obvious, but the plan is the element of the business model which really ties all the different activities together. And companies that don't plan service transformation and don't have those plans really bought into by the senior leadership team, they generally are disappointed with the results. So this is a very, very important part of the whole service transformation. So that is there. You see it at 9. That's kind of like the framework that I use, service business model. It's a framework that I use to help me navigate through business conversations, which are generally very messy. They don't go in a logical pattern, and it helps me fill in the gaps. But it also helps during service transformation to work with clients and help them understand where their priorities are, because you can't do all these things at the same time. Within a business, there'll be one thing that is often far more important and more immediate than others. So this helps, I think, helps people get a balanced view of how to proceed with a service transformation. So that's really that's the discussion that Haluk really asked me to take you through. If there's any questions on that or any feedback, I'll be very interested to have some.
Hi, Nick. This is Jim. Sorry, I had to get off mute. But could you? I like the part about the journey. How important do you think it is when you're talking about transformation to really understand the full history of a business, as well as maybe the full history of if the customers or businesses? How important is really understanding the history in your mind?
I think that's absolutely key, because the history gives some big clues as to the culture of the organization. So certainly the history of the company and the things that have been done is absolutely key. Often I find out when you go into a company, they'll say, oh yeah, we did this 4 or 5 years ago, and then you already know that you've got a problem. So that's an example of history. I think on the other side, the customer side is also very important, because I think that for me it's amazing how industrial brands, how strong they are, and it's very important to understand the client's perception of the brands and where that brand's been, especially if the company's been having a tough time. Just because they've been having a tough time for 3 or 4 or 5 years and not quite delivering on their brand values doesn't mean that the customer doesn't appreciate the brand. It's surprising how often they're kind of waiting for the company to do something special, so they can be they are supportive over a long time. So I think that's important to understand as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Other questions, comments for Nick?
Nick, this is Jeff Saperstein. Thank you very much. Very good framework. I was wondering if you are seeing interest in mobile and social and the opportunity to go global. with new platforms, et cetera, as part of service delivery or even innovation in services. Do you see interest in that, or are people intimidated by it? What has been your experience?
Well, I think firstly, mobile. Everything is going mobile. I mean, that is. I think, everything is going mobile. People are wanting to work on the move, and they want access to instant data. So my area, I guess that I specialize more is equipment manufacturing. People who make stuff, and that is certainly the case. So mobile it's changing dramatically. In terms of like social media, I don't see that the equipment manufacturers they certainly lag. For example, a lot of the IT industry where social networks and for example, putting calls straight through web portals and stuff like that is much more prevalent. So I think it's in terms of social, it comes down to very much the different types of customer segments. And
Thank you.
The third aspect was global, was it?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think that increasingly larger organizations are very, very aware that they have to deliver their brand globally and deliver it to the same value globally. So it's basically they have to offer the same level of service, whether it be in Europe or in Asia or in South America. That basically, because many of their customers are global, they want to see the same level of service and have the same expectations.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, I guess then I suppose that's the end of the call, unless everyone's already left the call because it's stunningly silent out there.
Sometimes. Hey, Lou.
Hi.
Sometimes people are on mute and talking, and they have a nice conversation and realize, oh, nobody heard me. So yes, if you're on mute, unmute. We've got another minute left. If there's a question or comment for Nick, I think we'll wrap it up. I do think Jeff Saperstein's service thinking framework might be of interest to you, Nick. As you were talking, I was mentally drawing some parallels with a few elements and noting some differences as well. So that might be an interesting follow-up, Nick, for you and Jeff Saperstein. And I don't know if Yassi's still on, but I know Yassi was really, and a lot of us were really impressed with that video that you made. So if there's anybody on the call that hasn't seen Nick's video, it's a really good one, and I know you can reach out to Nick or Yassi to get the link to it.
Jim, let me echo that. Nick made a very nice video interviewing an executive at Rolls-Royce on their servitization journey. So thank you, Nick. And currently it's not on the current website. It will be in the new website that is coming live in a couple of weeks. But I think you can find it on YouTube. Nick, I don't know where, under what people should search. But
if on YouTube, if you just put Frank-Partners YouTube, you'll find a channel, my channel there, and the interviews there. So Frank-Partners YouTube, put that into your browser, and you'll get to my channel where I've put this particular interview.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Everyone. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Yeah, bye now.
Bye.